Good afternoon, all. I'll be sharing about whether A-level computing is suitable for you. My name is Patrick, and I studied in Hwa Chong JC from 2019 to 2020. My subject combination was CCME, which was chemistry, computing, maths, and econs. And like this was a rather special subject combination because in fact, in my year, only 6 people in our cohort took this combination. Most people chose like physics and computing. All right, so why choose to study H2 computing? So what are the benefits? So for one, I feel that this is probably the most important point, is that practical work with Python, which you will learn in the course, is very likely to be relevant in many careers and university courses. This is like whether or not you're going to study IT or go into any other field in the future, because our world is getting more digitalized. And also beyond that, programming trains you to think creatively, because problems come in like all sorts of different forms, and you have to like kind of think on how to apply your existing knowledge to new problems. And also, if you're unfamiliar with a problem, your solutions tend to not work the first time round. So it will really train you in your perseverance to get through the course. And also, you get to have a more informed decision on whether computing is suitable for you as a career. If you have probably heard that, maybe computing earns you a lot of money when you graduate, should I pursue this career? Well, taking this subject would allow you to have a better idea. And also, this gives you a good foundation if you plan to study computer science at university level. Though it is by no means a requirement, because no university computing course requires you to take H2 computing at the A level. So you could just as easily take maths and like 2 other sciences. So let me proceed with what's actually covered in H2 computing. Now, the examination for A levels is just 2 papers, a written paper and a lab practical. The written paper is 60% of the score, and it will test both theory components as well as algorithms. Yes, which means that you might have to write code on paper. And the other part will be the lab practical, which is 40%. And this will be entirely Python, except for like when there's a web application which might use HTML, but I'll get to that later. And unlike coding competitions, if anyone has been in them before, partial marks will be awarded for correct lines of code, even if the program does not run or the output is wrong. So don't worry if you don't manage to completely solve a problem, you can still get credit for it. So in the syllabus, we have Python basics, which is just the fundamentals of working with Python. There are algorithms, which are the basic sorting, searching, as well as the usage of data structures. We have object-oriented programming, which you have to use in Python. And the theory part of it is also like why object-oriented programming is useful and what its characteristics are. Also, you'll be learning handling data, such as data validation, the using of like different bases for numbers like binaries and hexadecimals, and you also learn ASCII and Unicode. And a rather large topic in H2 computing will be databases, where in Python you learn to work with SQL as well as NoSQL. And for the theory part, you have all the various bits and pieces of databases like data redundancy, data dependency, like all different sorts of like theory pertaining to databases. And one other theory part is data privacy. And this you have to familiarize yourself with Singapore's PDPA, like Personal Data Protection Act, as well as knowing the list of data protection obligations. Now, one mostly theory part will be computer networks, where you will learn the structure of the internet, communication protocols, and the one lab portion for this will be learning how to do software programming in Python. Now, another topic, and this one is actually new in the 2020 syllabus, which is web applications, where you learn usability and design principles, as well as using HTML, CSS, and Python to create a web application. Now, 2 more theory parts, network security and ethics. So, lots of you might be wondering, if I have 0 programming experience, is H2 computing suitable for me? Well, Python will be taught starting from the absolute basics, so you don't actually need any programming experience beforehand. And you also have lots of lab time to practice. And if you're really struggling, you can ask peers with prior programming experience, and of course, you can ask your tutor. However, I think it is still important to acknowledge that you will feel disadvantaged at first. And you may also feel that the pace is sometimes going too fast and perhaps like struggle to get used to coding. Yeah, I talked to some of my friends with zero programming experience before they joined H2 Computing, and yeah, this seems to be a rather common sentiment that at first they felt that perhaps they struggled a bit, but eventually you have 2 years to get used to working with Python, get used to working with different programming languages and procedures. So yeah, you do have lots of time. Now, on the other hand, if let's say, oh, I love programming, I'm in the computing cloud, I've taken part in like various computing challenges. Well, can I get 100% in this course with my eyes closed? Well, okay, you will admittedly have a far easier time with the subject, especially the practical portion of the subject. And well, this will allow you to spend more time on other subjects that you are weaker at. However, do note that you will still have to spend time memorizing stuff, especially the theory part, which participating in coding competitions will not really expose yourself to. Remember, the written paper, the theory paper is 60% of your score. And also for the lab part, intuition can only get you so far. There are lots of like practical tasks like using databases or software programming that still require you to familiarize yourself with like specific functions and procedures. So you might have to do a bit of memorizing as well. So what is the H2 computing experience? Now, considering that the syllabus changed pretty dramatically in 2020, which is when they released the new syllabus, and also comparatively to like, let's say, chemistry, physics, or biology, very few students in Singapore take computing. So both of these result in the fact that like learning is more self-directed, as there is virtually no resources specifically for H2 computing beyond your own school's notes. And there are also like far fewer past year's papers. So this really depends on your learning style. If you're very used to studying subjects with a wealth of like past year questions and past year papers that you can just do and improve yourself, well, you might struggle a bit in this component because H2 computing doesn't really have a lot of these kinds of resources. There are many questions in like both the theory and the practical portion that you might have to kind of like Google around, search around, or ask your friends if you want to like try to find the appropriate answer. Now, the practical part, there would, in my experience in HC, JC, there is like 2 lab sessions as well as 1 lecture session. And the lecture session was only in the first year. They didn't have lectures afterwards in the second year. In the practical sessions, you will attempt tutorial questions in the lab where your tutor and other classmates can assist you if you need help. And the practical labs are a good time to get used to the basics of coding a particular algorithm such that at home, you can tackle more challenging problems in your homework. Now, the theory portion, as I've said, consists of lecture sessions, and honestly, some of the topics such as computer networks does involve a bit of rote learning, and very often these kind of topics requires just surface level understanding of the material, because the theory paper works like this. The breadth of the theory paper is quite large, admittedly, but then for each topic, you might get questions which are worth like what 1 or 2 or 3 marks, which is just how does this work? How does that work? Like how does a client server network work? Something like this, and you only need to give like 1 or 2 sentences as answers, and you can get the mark. So yeah, do not worry too much about the theory portion. As long as you do like a bit of memorization, you'll be good. I think the main challenge for this course comes in the practical portion. So at this point, you might still be wondering, like given all the information I've just shared, should you take H2 computing? So when I asked around, my peers who had no prior coding experience before taking the subject say that they have no regrets in taking the subject, even though it was very challenging at first. So don't feel like intimidated by the fact that this seems like uncharted waters if you haven't programmed before, because you can still have a decent time. And for experienced programmers, take it as an opportunity to further explore computing. Also, well, you get to spend less time on this subject, meaning more time for others that you might be need to work very hard on. And for aspiring programmers, take it as the technical skills are far more likely to be useful to your future career as compared to other sciences. yeah, as I've said, the IT skills that you've learned can be applied to like many different fields in the future. If you take something like chem or bio, if you don't pursue science research in the future, the technical skills you learn from those may not really be as applicable. So that's something for you to consider, even if you have not ever programmed before. So how should you prepare? Well, if you plan on taking HD computing, first ensure that, of course, your GC of choice offers the subject. So do search their websites if you're not very sure. And if you're new to programming, consider familiarizing yourself with basic coding in Python 3 on online sites. For one, I think like one site you could consider is W3 Schools. Okay, so firstly, someone asked, why did you take computing, seeing that it is not required for uni courses? Well, okay, so I had a bit of like computing experience before because I was from Hwa Chong in high school, and in Sec 2 we got a bit of exposure to computing, where I was like taught basic C++, and I instantly fell in love because I felt that programming was it was quite fun to like just type in a few lines and like direct what a program can do, and pretty satisfying when I saw the results. So this led me to like consider pursuing a career in computing, and this was actually the main reason why I chose the subject, to explore my interest and figure out whether I really wanted it as a career. Yeah, though of course, if you are considering computing as a uni subject, you honestly really just need A-level maths. You really don't need HD computing. But of course, I chose this over another science because, well, I have a greater interest in this subject. All right, so yeah, did I have programming knowledge before JC? Yeah, so in Sec 2, I learned like basic C++. Honestly, didn't travel too far with that, but yeah, like all the basics like conditional statements, like loops and like functions, stuff like that. And I did a bit of like exploration afterwards. I learned a bit of Java to try to like code plugins for Minecraft, and I learned some of the languages used in web applications like JavaScript, and I tried to like create a few very basic, simple single-page applications with JavaScript. Yeah, so honestly, for me, it was a bit of like a dabble a bit in this language, dabble a bit in that language, trying to find my interest. But yeah, for H2 computing, you needed Python, and I did not have any specific knowledge about Python before I joined the course. But if you know any other like programming languages, Python would honestly not be very difficult to pick up at all. Okay, which application is used? Okay, for because the H2 computing syllabus covers like some specialized uh, programs like databases. For those you require the special programs. For databases, we will use MongoDB for SQL, and for the web application, or actually, yeah, for the web application, yeah, we just the school used Notepad++ to edit HTML or CSS, but honestly, any code editor will work. Yeah, but honestly, as long as you have a Python editor, a Python IDE, it will work just fine. Is a specific laptop model needed? No. In fact, for my school, we provide the school computer lab has laptops for students who do not wish to bring their own, but you could also bring your own if you wanted. Did you use any websites or online resources to practice? Okay, not really, because I felt that the school's resources were sufficient. But like, if you have any specific question like that your school's resources do not cover, you could always just try to Google it online. What is the A rate for A levels? Okay, honestly, this one, well, I was not very sure for my year, which was 2020, but I searched my school site for the 2019 results. It was 7 in 10 for computing, which was on par with like chemistry, physics, and biology. So there's no significant difference between computing and other subjects. Is it easy to score? Okay, um, this really depends on like whether you have programmed before or not. Because I feel that like yeah, the the new students in H2 computing often come from like these two very different camps. Those that have programmed before and those that are completely new. For experienced programmers, well, the practical portion at least is definitely very easy to score. And even if you're new, it's not that hard. You just might need some time to, adapt to like working with this, because as well, quoting a friend that I had that had never programmed before, it's like learning a new language. You take a lot of time to get used to it, but once you do, then you can kind of like pick up a lot of new knowledge more easily. And for the theory component, personally, I would say it could be slightly harder to score than other sciences, because sometimes for like certain theory questions, especially for those where for certain topics such as computer networks or like network security, where they ask you for like one or two sentence answers, like what does this do, what does that do, what are the comparisons between like this infrastructure and that infrastructure. Your school's notes may not have like covered everything in detail. So one effect of that is that you may not know exactly what is being asked, as opposed to the more established sciences, where like all these kinds of like questions have come out like a billion times before in past year papers. So once you see the question, you instantly know like what you're supposed to answer. So the theory portion may be a bit harder, but the practical portion, again, it depends on which camp you're in. So the big changes made. Okay, so yeah, as I mentioned, there was a new topic added in, which was the web application portion. So I think prior to that, they had like nothing on this, which meant that like there were no past year questions on like how to, like they asked you to create a web application and like. So I think one effect of this was like our tutors weren't exactly very sure on like how much would be like demanded of us in a web application. So like whether we were supposed to like create an entire application from scratch or just create a single page for an application, because well the difference in like the amount of workload for these two separate tasks wasn't very much. Yet they didn't exactly know like what was tested or what would be demanded. But then like funnily enough, for the 2020 A levels, the A level practical for H2 computing, I remember that there was like virtually almost nothing on this new topic. I don't know if that's just like a once-off thing, or maybe in subsequent years they would set like more questions of web applications. But yeah, it was pretty funny to like spend a lot of time studying for this new topic and to have it barely come out at all. Yeah, but then like I think there were other topics in the old syllabus that got removed, like project management, stuff like that. So this is why past year papers, like computing papers before 2020, they may or may not be much of a help. Like there are certain questions in it that may help and certain questions that will be completely irrelevant to you. So it's just something to keep in mind if you consider the amount of practice materials you have. Would it be better to take computing or physics if you want to go into engineering in the future? Okay, I think that, well, certain courses at university level that, like for engineering, may actually require you to take physics. I'm not too sure on this, but I'm pretty sure that yeah, certain courses will require that. So if you do intend to pursue engineering, like not computer engineering, but engineering, then go ahead, take physics over computing. What is the best and worst part about taking computing? Okay, so for this, I think I can only speak from personal experience as like someone who has like programmed a bit before H2 computing, which meant that like I found the subject relatively easy. The best part is honestly like yeah, it allows me to pursue like this subject area that I enjoy a lot, and like learning like all these like new things, like working with a lot of these new tools, like working with databases and the like, which was pretty cool when you got it to work, and really allows you to like gain an appreciation for the type of like technologies that are present in today's world. So yeah, the worst part I think would be some of the theory portions where it's like just memorization, because yeah, admittedly, there are some of the topics that are just rote learning, and yeah, sometimes the memorization part of certain theory topics may just seem quite dull and boring. Yeah, and that was the part I didn't really enjoy. But then, if you are completely new to programming, I suppose that one of the one of the parts in computing you will struggle with the most is really just getting used to it at first, because you might find yourself very far behind, or you do not understand what is being taught. But yeah, as long as you persevere, I'm sure that you can overcome these challenges. Is SQL tested? Yes. Yeah, in the practical session, you will learn to work with SQL in with Python, and in the theory section, you might be asked to like write some SQL queries in a theory paper. Do keep in mind though that like aside from SQL, no SQL is also tested. Like no SQL being another form of database. Right, and debating between physics chemistry and physics computing. What would be your recommendation in terms of selecting the subject combination in JC? Is it okay to not take it in JC and go to uni computer science? Okay, so the same question again, it is definitely okay, because again, for every like uni computer science course, they will also assume that you have no prior knowledge. Perhaps like having prior knowledge will allows you to perhaps skip a half year module after taking a test or something for certain courses. But yeah, there is by no means a requirement to take H2 computing in JC, because well again, H2 computing is so uncommon. Like comparatively, like so few students take it, so it is pretty unreasonable to have it as a requirement. So about physics chemistry and physics computing, I would honestly suggest just follow your heart. Which one which one do you prefer, chemistry or computing? Which one do you think you'll be more interested to learn? Because A level subjects can be a bit daunting in like how much content they cover. So well, if you want to take chemistry, then do keep in mind that like yeah, chemistry at A levels, I think many people have told me they consider it one of like the hardest sciences in JC. So yeah, if it really depends on like your interests and what you think you know you could sustain yourself better in like studying for like 2 years and pressing on towards A levels. What are you studying now and how is computing relevant? Okay, so since I graduated from JC just last year, I'm currently doing NS, but I do intend to pursue computer science as a university course. So yeah, well, computing will be like directly relevant to my chosen career, though I think that maybe like one main difference between computer science at university level and at JC is that perhaps the JC level computer science, I mean computing, does have like it's a bit more application based rather than theory based. You don't really dive deep into like the let's say the mathematical principles mathematical principles behind computing and yeah like complexity and stuff like that. You really just explore different areas like how to work with databases, how to work with an web application, stuff like that. It's more application based. While I believe that university level computer science would be more theoretical. Where where did you learn from before JC? Um, okay, I suppose you mean like learn programming. So yeah, for my initial experience with coding would be like sec one, sec two infocom sessions in HCI. But after that, I learned like other languages solely by online sources because honestly, um, there are many different like free online courses that teach you like various programming languages. Like you could check out Code Academy, for example. And yeah, like these sites will provide a wealth of resources for you to just explore without having to pay a single cent. So I feel that like these resources are very useful to enable you to get a start on different programming languages. How do you practice? How does school homework look like? All right, so we are given sets of tutorials for okay, this was mainly for like practicals. For the theory part, we have virtually no homework. All right, so for the practical part, we'll have like these sets of tutorials for each topic. For example, like we might have like one on loops, and then like one or two for like databases and so on. And for each one, it's just really just different question types, like all revolving around the same basic idea. So for example, for loops, there'll be like each tutorial question will be like given a different scenario, and then like you try to like code a program. They will like do this using a loop, and like do that using a loop, and yeah, they really try to like pace you appropriately. So the questions will start from like the most basic, the simplest, and like slowly work their way to be slightly more complicated and more complex. So yeah, don't feel that like the tutorial questions are instantly going to stump you and that you're going to find them extremely hard. You are given like stepping stones to practice. Yeah, but then for lab work, I suppose you can expect like one tutorial of like perhaps anywhere between like 5 to 10 questions every like week or 2 weeks, and so on. Honestly, the workload is not very much compared to other subjects, and it really depends on like how quickly you can grasp the programming concepts. For someone like me who has had prior experience before, these tutorials are honestly not very hard. I can get it done in like roughly like 1 to 2 hours. Yeah, more like if you're still struggling, you might take a lot more time. Yeah, what are you planning to study in university? Yeah, I've answered this previously. I'm intending to take computer science. So yeah, in fact, I kind of like chose H2 computing because I already have a university path in mind. What career path are you looking into? I intend to like pursue something like software development or software engineering after I graduate from university. Yeah, so which uni are you in? Right now, I'm still like in a toss up on like applying to different universities because well, I'm still in NS, and yeah, I'm considering like both local and overseas options. So I don't really have like a definite university in mind yet. Is the subject more individual or more group work? All right, so okay, I'm speaking from my own experience in HCI, but of course, your experience if you go to a different JC might differ. Um, for the coding part, it's mostly individual work. Um, yeah, like all the tutorials and like, everything you're expected to get it done by yourself. However, our tutors do occasionally like give us like random group projects to like get more used to like a subject. For example, for like object-oriented programming, we got like a little like group competition where we created anything we wanted using object-oriented programming, and like yeah, and then we would like give a little presentation at the end of our work. So yeah, to the rest of the class, and like yeah, it was like a little competition. Like people were voted for the best project, yeah, stuff like that. But like these are like occasional stuff. It's not yeah, group work is like not really like required in the syllabus or nor does it form a large part of the teaching. For the theory part in my first year, while we still had lectures, there will often be like group work where like various groups just like researched about a certain area uh, pertaining to the topic, and then we will just like give presentations to the rest of the class on like that specific area. So yeah, honestly, for the lecturers, it was like pretty hands off. They just like assign us various topics, and then yeah, we'll give a presentation. So yeah, it was a lot of these like group presentations, but this kind of like like there was like less of these towards the end of the year, and like none at all in year 2. Right. So one consequence of like these group sharings is that you know for certain of those topics covered in lectures, like some of the theory topics, the teachers don't really have notes. So yeah, all that you need to learn about like these areas, you can get solely from your group's presentations. So everyone has this sense of shared responsibility. Like they have to like do the best they can, so that other students like do not miss out and like miss out on something that they need to study for the exams. Yeah, and this also means that like because there are no notes, so you kind of have to like be more proactive, perhaps compile your own theory notes from your friends' presentations. Yeah, so that you can like do revision before A levels. How much would you say that the lack of resources has affected your learning and your grades? Okay, yeah, this is a interesting question because yeah, I suppose that like the lack of resources would definitely be a worry for some people who might want to take computing. How much it has affected my learning? I feel that like okay, this mostly applies to the theory portion, because like you don't exactly know like how like what is expected of you in the theory paper because let's just say that for example you need to like a theory paper question might ask like how does the domain name server DNS work, and if you try to search this online you might get like entire articles going down to the finest details about how each particular system works, and you only need like uh like 2 to 3 sentence answer. So yeah, this you might not really know like what is required of you, and you might have to like do some summarization by yourself. um but But honestly, right, such things, one, you might sometimes get them wrong because you don't know the keywords. I feel that these kind of questions, they do not occupy like too much of the score. Like as long as you have a general idea on like how these work, and you just like write them down like as a summary, well, then chances are you get most of the marks, like 70-80%, which would honestly be enough already. And I guess like what sets computing apart from like other sciences is that yeah, mostly they do not look for keywords, so you do not really have to like worry about like disregard that there are certain keywords that you miss out and like this will result in your answer having no marks. No, that is not true. Yeah, as long as you give a general idea, you capture like the main ideas of like how this works, how that works, then you will basically just get the marks. um yeah, meanwhile I guess for the theory portion, I mean for the practical portion, the lack of resources online means that like perhaps for a specific algorithm, if you don't know exactly how to do it, you might have to like just use your school's own notes. And honestly, I feel that my school's notes have been like pretty decent so far. They have covered like almost everything you need to know. But sometimes there might be like slip ups, there might be errors, and in such cases, you can honestly just ask your tutor, or ask your classmates if you need any help. So for this question, I'll say that it does not really affect my learning, like not in any significant way. But for my grades, uh, well, I felt that this subject personally was pretty easy, so yeah, it did not really affect my grades either. Do people in university take computing in another major like business? Well, yes. Yeah, in fact, if you search on like various universities like NUS, they do offer like computing with a second major, such as computing and mathematics, or yeah, like some other combination of like information systems and business. I Yeah, I think that's a possible choice. I'm not too sure about that though, but yeah, you can either choose to take computing singly, or yeah, there are various other options. Just search the university website for the uni you're interested in, and you'll see what they have. For computing, do you depend on teachers more or individual? I feel that this will really depend on like to what extent you already have a grasp on programming. So, well, if you're just starting out and if you don't instantly like get used to programming, you might struggle a bit. And in this case, I believe that your tutors would really guide you through the steps and really like allow you to like come to terms with various algorithms at your own pace. So yeah, honestly, there is nothing much to like, worry about it. Your teachers won't be like entirely hands off and expect you to find the solution on your own. If you are struggling, they will help you. And I think that your classmates, if they already like they have a better grasp of the subject, they will also be like there to like really help you. So don't be afraid to ask around if you are struggling. But I guess if you are already quite competent at programming, then um, well, you don't really have to like depend on your teachers at all. In fact, during lab sessions, you can just like do tutorial questions at your own pace, and you can just just complete the tutorial questions while like others are seeking help from the tutor. So yeah, in this case, yeah, you would rely a lot more on the individual. Where do you seek help when you don't do well in H2 computing? Yeah, again, I feel that like the most reliable sources would just be your teachers and your peers, especially your teachers, because they would have the best idea of like what is required for the syllabus, and also like how best to help you with whatever struggles you're facing. So yeah, I've seen like many of my peers also like do that. If let's say even if they are not in school, if they're at home and they're struggling with a tutorial question, they can just message their tutor, just like text them and ask for help on a specific problem. There's really no issue with that. The tutors will be happy to oblige you. So yeah, I feel that uh, your main resource should be your teachers. But in case that they are not available, you can also try to search online, like many different like programming questions probably have answers on Stack Exchange. And if you need help on like a specific algorithm, like let's say sorting or searching algorithm, I'm sure that like there'll be many different online sources that all like detail the same way on how to do it, and you can rely on those instead. Is there H1 computing? Um, no, actually, I feel that this is probably because um, like there are not many people that take H2 computing, and well, H1 computing there'll be even fewer people, and definitely like yeah, it is it's probably like a waste of resources. And I think for the same reason, and probably like quite disappointing for myself, there is also no H3 computing. Yeah, so instead I chose H3 chemistry. Is there a marking scheme? Okay, um, I'm going to split this into like the practical, which is like the coding, as well as the theory. Okay, so for practicals, for for, for each question, um, marks will be awarded for like specific key steps, such as like for example, uh, in searching, like just performing like the one or two lines of code that actually does the search would give you like 1 mark, like and even at some points like asking for input from the user correctly will also grant you a mark, stuff like that. And if you really like need the mark scheme to understand like what exactly you need to do, you can request it from your tutors. And also like do take note that like sometimes because of like specific requirements, like perhaps in like specific problems they require you to like take certain steps, even if they may not be necessary. So sometimes even if your code does work, you may not get a full mark. You might like use 1 or 2 marks for your stuff that you have omitted. But yeah, generally I think that for practical there is a pretty like well defined mark scheme. Though honestly, try not to approach problems by like thinking about like what is required in the mark scheme. As long as you, I think the main focus is really just making sure that your program works, and really just like producing the correct output, because this is the main challenge I feel in the practical portion. Once you've gotten this done, you should have like no problem really getting an A. For the theory portion, yeah, like various questions where they just ask you like how this works, how that works. There is also a mark scheme. However, it is pretty flexible. So you might say something that like uses like literally none of the words in the suggested answers, but as long as it produces the same idea, your teachers will mark pretty leniently. They'll still give you the mark. So yeah, don't really worry about that. Computing in JC, is it mainly Python or C++? It is 95% Python. The remainder would be for the web application, which requires you to use a bit of HTML or CSS. Other languages like Java or C++ is totally not required. Yeah. However, like if you do have like prior knowledge in other programming languages and not Python, it will still give you a very like big edge in learning Python, because honestly, like a lot of these programming languages at their core, they are the same idea. So you can honestly just easily adapt to the syntax of Python, and yeah, you have like not much of a problem at all. What is the entrance test for computing talent program like? All right, so we didn't have an entrance test for HCI, so unfortunately I cannot really help you on this. But yeah, if I suppose like for your school, if you need more of an idea, you can probably just email the tutors like and ask them for like more information about this if you like, or like search their website or something. Okay, to my knowledge, HCI has a computing talent program that is for sort of advanced computing. Oh, interesting. Yeah, so yeah, this scheme, yeah, is probably new because it did not exist back in 2019 when I was in J1. So yeah, I'm sorry I can't really like, help you on this. Okay, what is computer science about? So, well, is this a question on like JC computing or university level computing? Because yeah, I think yeah, computer science as opposed to like computing does focus more on like the theory behind computing. It's like it explores like the limitations of computers, what they can or cannot do, and like also explores the systems and the infrastructure behind computers. Uh, yeah, and like such that it really like seeks to work with computers itself, while like JC computing is really more of the applications, like understanding how like what the computing systems that we currently use are, as well as like how to operate, how like work with them, and how to operate them. So computer science is more theoretical, but that is not what H2 computing is about. Did you participate in NOI? Will it help in applying for university? Okay, so I've had a brush with competitive programming. Like I've attended like certain classes, but I have not actually participated in NOI or like, any other like coding competition for that matter. But yes, I do believe it would definitely help in applying for university. Like I think NUS computer science will definitely like consider your application far more seriously if you've gotten prizes in like NOI or like the even like higher level competitions like APIO or IOI. You definitely get an edge. Would a complete beginner in computing be able to keep up with the JC syllabus? Yes. For programming, yeah, do keep in mind that you have 2 whole years to kind of like work with the subject. So, admittedly, like perhaps the first, let's say, 6 months could be a struggle. But again, this depends on like whether or not you can like instantly grasp the subjects, because this really differs like between individuals. Like whether or not you'll be able to like understand like how to make code do what you want it to do, and how do you like incorporate like different lines of code to like accomplish a task that you want. but but honestly, 6 months you can probably like kind of like get a grasp of it and be able to keep up. But admittedly, the beginning could be a bit turbulent, and you might find yourself like a bit behind. But again, do not worry. It's just the beginning of the journey, which may be a bit um yeah, you might find it a bit problematic. But again, you have your tutors and your peers around you to help you. So don't let this deter you from picking up H2 computing. You'll find that pretty rewarding, and again, the technical skills you gain from it will be transferable to other careers. Would learning Python 3 beforehand help you to keep up? Oh yes, definitely. Yeah, I suggest that if you're a total newbie in programming and you do want to take up H2 computing, yeah, just find some like online resources, like online sites that can help you familiarize yourself with Python 3. And you might want to like download like a Python IDE, or okay, even some like online compilers can work. Try to like code very simple programs for yourself. Like for example, user inputs 2 numbers and then you output the sum, stuff like that. yeah, just very simple programs, and you gradually like try like work with like different aspects, like work with functions, work with loops, yeah, stuff like that. And just try to like create like very small little programs, because once you get like pretty comfortable with doing this, then it will definitely make the beginning of your journey in H2 computing a lot easier. What does the flow of tests for A-level computing look like? Sorry, what do you mean by flow of tests? If you mean like the assessments that they have, it should just follow. It will follow the rest of your subjects as well. Like the assessments will all happen during like some like block tests season, as well as like end of years, I mean promos and stuff like that. Yeah, there are no like a project part of the assessment or anything that might make it like different from the other science subjects.